to the RunnerX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running.
Welcome back to the RunnerX podcast. Today, Valerie and I wanted to talk about we get injured runners, right, Valerie, all the time. And we have people asking for stretches and what's the best roller I should use? Should I use one with lumps on it, right? Should I? We have balls that we have. We totally support the Accu mobility as well as the tune-up balls. Some people I know will get, I think we were talking about this, what are they, lacrosse balls, really hard balls? What's the difference and when should I get one? I love my gun, by the way. And I love my gun because it gets my butt. It gets really deep into my butt where I can't quite roll it. Like it's like I almost need that lacrosse ball, but it hurts. But the gun doesn't hurt as bad, but I feel like it loosens it up. So what am I killing myself by using one of those beating guns on me?
No. So here's the thing, and believe me, I love gadgets and I will try them all. First and foremost, I believe in self-massage and kind of finding the area yourself, like with your fingers, especially if it's somewhere in your feet or your ankles or shin, calf area. Just self-massage is amazing, especially where there's, where you can kind of get in and feel what's going on. Absolutely, foam rollers are great if you'll use them. See, that's the thing. Yeah. People are like, should I get one? I always say, will you use it? We're big fans of Accu Mobility. We love their Eclipse roller, but any roller is good if you will use it. Right. Because what is the roller really doing? It's two things. One is it's getting blood flow to the area, and second, it's trying to break up any adhesions you have. I call them knots. You'll roll and you'll find it's an adhesion. So it's to prevent scar tissue from building up in the area. The reason you guys like the gun so much is it's instant relief, just like you're saying. It can get right to the area. And again, think about what all these things are doing. They all do the same thing. They bring awareness to the area, meaning when you stimulate an area, whether it's your fingers or you're rolling or you're using a gun, you're getting a bunch of blood flow to the area. Well, that helps flush the area. Okay. It's like a cleanse.
Yeah, okay. So what happens when... So we've talked about this. I've not been running. I've not been exercising, so I'm a little more out of shape. I have a little bit more skin and fat on top of my muscles. They have a little bit of a casing right now. So when I am I go along my thigh, the IT band, it'll almost feel like shooting pain. Mm-hmm. Almost like I'm breaking up lactic acid. Now, I'm not a physiologist, so am I really doing that? Yeah. What's really happening when I'm feeling that?
It's just the same thing. It's like you've got a tight, this is the problem that we don't know. It's physiology is an issue, right? So you cannot stretch an IT band. Okay. It's right. Made out of metal. I mean, it's not, but it's just, so that we feel tight, or what we call tight, if you will. And, but it's like you've got to make sure if my IT band is tight or I'm feeling when I put the massage gun or the roller in that area, it's usually a hip that's actually causing the issue, always going up and down the river. But like I said, what's happening is your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments, they want to move through their full range of motion. When they cannot move through the full range of motion, then other areas start to work more or less. And so that's why you feel tension or pain. Now, I can tell you, because I do a lot of rolling and whatnot, I don't want you to feel pain when you roll. I want you to feel like more of a release. Okay. But it's the same thing. It's like if you have an area that you've got some tension on, like that IT band, that right. Believe me, every runner that's out there right now is saying, "Oh my gosh, my IT band." Yeah. But that's fine to roll it, but really, it's the hip. And so, Caroline said, I feel like a lacrosse ball's easier. Yeah. And by the way, it's not, even if you're overweight, guys, you don't have extra, it's not, you can still roll and all that. It's really not a problem. Just know the lacrosse ball, the reason we prefer a tune-up ball is that if you think it feels good because it's hard, But actually, your body's already tense and tight. It would prefer a soft touch.
Okay.
Like massage. Like massage itself is with fingers, you know. So again, just because you feel like, oh, I need to really get in there, and I understand that too. That's why people like using those harder tools.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I stopped using it when we started talking about the river up and down, and I started finding that even when my hip hurts or my quad is tingly, that's what happens. I'll work out with you in the morning. I'll stand up my stand-up desk. I'll go to sit down and watch a couple hours of TV or what have you, and I go to get up, and my legs are my thighs, my quads are just going like, they feel like the only thing I could describe it is restless leg syndrome. They're like going blah, 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 blah,
well, and it's because again, if you've been seated for a while, you don't have any blood flow.
Right. So what I'll usually do is I'll get up and I'll find the tune-up ball and try to keep my dogs away from it. And then I stand up and I roll my feet. I roll my heel. I make sure I get in under each of my toes. And it's amazing to me. It releases everything up that river. That's right. And that's really powerful. That was something we talked about in a previous episode. But let's talk about that idea of the feet again. And we were just talking too about an Achilles stretch. Why is it so important to really look at those feet? You were saying how many muscles or how many?
Yeah, I mean, I just saw this yesterday. You know, we always talk about muscles. Everybody's on their muscles. And I run with my quads. I hear this all the time. No, you don't. You run with your feet. Your feet are connected to the ground. The actual running muscle is the hamstring. And the hamstring, we only use 10% of it. The rest of all the muscular work is responding to body weight. But where's my body weight? My body weight is on my foot. So if I'm putting emphasis in my running, for example, you are one of those people that either pushes or reaches because you haven't been through our Run RX course, it's 3 times your body weight. And it's 3 times your body weight on your foot. And unfortunately, that impact travels right up.
Yeah.
So it hits the foot, goes up the shin, goes into the femur, goes up to the hip, to the lower back. Your whole body is connected. And the bummer is, and this goes into the shoes for a second, they keep putting more cushion on the shoes, but what they found, and this is all documented research, when the person has more cushion on the shoe, they actually hit the ground harder because they don't feel it.
Oh, okay.
So they don't feel it, they actually are looking for it. Your foot and your brain want to connect. Your brain wants to know where your foot is. Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't, because you're wearing a huge clunky shoe, it actually has to look harder. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Then it's almost telling you, hit the ground harder so I can feel where you are.
Yeah.
Guys, you have no idea how much effort and impact you'll reduce off of your poor feet, which will in turn then reduce the impact off your shin or off your heel or off your plantar or off these areas that you're feeling the stress simply by learning how to unweigh the foot. But by the way, yeah, the ankle, the foot, it's like 100 muscles in there. So when people say to me, my hips are tight. I'm like, let's start with your feet. And that doesn't mean your hips are not tight. It just means let me unstick your feet and then your calves and then your hips, and we start to work that whole chain.
Now, and I kind of want to throw back everybody. I know we've said this before, and you might be thinking, oh, that's Valerie. Valerie talks like, guys, look up holistic stretchers. Before I met Valerie, I had come across a gentleman that's all he did. He stretched you. He was a masseuse, but his whole point was to stretch you. And we were talking about what I talk about with Valerie, about my hips, about my knees. And he actually showed me what Valerie talked about a couple weeks ago, which was my big toe. My big toe was connected too much to my other toes. And so he literally was twisting my big toe and he said, I'm unwrapping it. This is how he put it. He said, I'm going to unwrap the big toe. It's going to go, and then he started unwrapping the ankle, and he literally, he twisted my body in such a way to unwrap me. Now, I'll be honest, during it, I can't believe I paid as much money as I did to go to him, because I used to tell him this hurts. But when I was done, it was glorious. The blood flow, the ability to stretch, to sleep, to do whatever. It was fantastic because suddenly my muscles were no longer these twisted rubber bands that started at my feet and went all the way up my body.
Yeah, there's a story, I don't know, I have to find it, but there's a guy that this was a couple years ago, several years ago, Anyway, he was doing a cadaver study, and he literally, like, no one had the thought to do this. Isn't that funny? Like, when you hear someone that's the first time to do it, he basically cut the person so there wouldn't be a cut in the skin. Okay. Which sounds kind of gross. But what he discovered is the shoulder is connected to the big toe, which means for physiotherapists, for physiologists, for anybody that works with the body, do you understand that? If my big toe is not working correctly, which most people's is not, unfortunately, neither is your shoulder. Like, the connection is there. I mean, it's like, and the guy even said, he's obviously a doctor, and he said, like, these are the kinds of things where we got too specialized. We keep separating our body parts. There's no such thing. You're one connected body. Mm-hmm. And the more you think about it that way, you will be less inclined to be like, my foot hurts or my thigh or whatever it is. It's a connection. And then find where in the connection, right? Yeah. We start, like with us, we start with the feet and we move all the way up through the shoulder. It's always full body, like in your warm up even, and you'll start to find like, oh, okay, I'm more connected. The more you connect your body that way when you're running, you start thinking less of yourself as parts and more as like one unit. Right, one unit. Okay. And then just to throw out there that idea, because as you were talking about the shoulder connecting to my big toe, it makes me think of reflexology and how, as Western medicine, we've kind of poo-pooed that idea of our feet and that you can, oh, what do you mean you can rub my pinky and it's going to cure cancer? I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm trying to be real that reflexology has been around for centuries. The whole idea of the body and connecting and all there has been around for centuries, if I'm not mistaken. It's part of our Eastern civilization, correct? Right. And there's a lot of, and here's, I think, a challenge for anybody. If you start to if you're injured and you start to go to PT or you start to look on the internet, you're going to find so many things. Yeah. We really I'm all about simplicity and start with the basics. Like, can you actually pick something up with your foot? When is the last time you actually sat down with your foot and tried to isolate not just the big toe, but the rest of the toes, the pinky toes? When's the last time you just took your shoes off and actually did a foot, scruncher? You know what I mean? I think people forget about that. And then also we're stuck on stretching. The reality is there's no such thing because muscles don't stretch. Muscles contract and release. So stretching is something we've invented, if you will. The reality is what we want to feel is that the muscles are allowed to relax. That's the feeling you feel. We say stretching, and it's okay. I'm not trying to change, anything there. But to understand, to know yourself, your muscles only contract and release. They don't stretch. So the lengthening we feel with that, it's a lengthening, and then you have to let it relax. So the more you can feel when you're sitting or when you stand up, the more you can feel like, oh, I still feel relaxed. Mm-hmm. That's the feeling that feels good after that. So just to wrap this up, when I am stretching, I'm actually that's an action of releasing the muscle. Yeah. So correct? Instead of trying, for example, let's just use a really simple thought. If you're sitting straight right now, just sitting straight up, legs out, and I said, hey, touch your toes. I didn't say anything else but touch your toes. Most people's first response is, oh, my hamstrings are tight. Oh, my back is tight. You see what I mean? Yeah. You just limited yourself. Oh, yeah. Right? Because if I'm just touching my toes, now I may develop an awareness like, oh, I feel that in my hamstrings. Oh, I feel that in my back. So let that be, instead of saying, oh, I have tight hamstrings, I have a tight back. Think instead of, let me shift my position so that instead of my hamstrings having to contract, they can stay relaxed while I touch my toes. See, it's a whole different mindset. So if I'm feeling it in my back, because we're actually sitting on the floor, guys, and I'm actually touching my toes, and I'm feeling it up right in the center of my back, but it feels kind of good. It feels... Because you think that you're stretching. Okay. See, it's perception. Right now, I'm looking at her, and she's bent over. Okay. So it's not... It's not correct. But it's okay. It's how she touched her toes. See, then I would say, okay, now I'm going to change it to give you a standard. Right. So first I just said touch your toes. I didn't say how. So maybe it was for you like this. Right. And then I'm going to say, okay, now I want you to hold your shoulders over your hips and only extend your arms as far as they will go. And if you can touch, great. And if not, don't.
Which
See
I
the
can't.
difference?
Right.
Right. So then you would say, oh, now I feel a little bit of tension. So what's interesting, so then it's really, where's her limitation? It's not in the tightness of the muscles, it's in her range of motion.
Right.
So then I would say, okay, so now I know I need to give you more range of motion exercises in the hip and hamstring.
In the hip and hamstring.
So that you can do this without having to feel like, oh, my hamstrings are going to pop in two, or I feel my low back.
Right.
So it's fun. Then it's communication.
Yeah, I wish we were videotaping ourselves, but that was really powerful because that's exactly what happened. I rolled over, and so I felt it in my back. When I stood upright, or actually, kept my torso upright, I'm not feeling it in my back, but I'm limited. I'm only going down about probably 30 degrees, guys.
Correct.
I cannot touch my toes. But she's absolutely right. If I force it, I'm going to start feeling it in my hips and my hamstrings.
Right. So then it's like, please do not ask your muscles to go past a point than they want to go.
Because that's how you pull a muscle.
Because that's how you hurt yourself. That's right.
Is it possible to pull a muscle?
In 100%.
Okay, so you actually can rip a muscle, pull it.
Oh yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, I'm just.
That's exactly right. I mean, and that's what a shin splint turns into, a stress fracture. And what is a stress fracture? A stress fracture is when the muscle and ligament tear away from the bone and actually break the bone. So yeah, you don't want to get a stress fracture. Same with the hamstring. What's the number one injury in track and field? Hamstring. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they kick back, right? They push and kick back. Number one injury in marathon endurance running is in the front. It's usually the shin splint, the plantar fasciitis, the hip, the IT band, because they're generally reaching in the front. But it has nothing to do with because they have tight hips or hamstrings.
Okay. Well, that was good. Okay, so hope you guys, if you want, I'll try to put into the show notes the link to AccuMobility as well as to the tune-up. We are an affiliate for AccuMobility. But it's really more just that's who we use. That's what we recommend, and we hope you guys get out there. And if you're going to get a ball, if you're going to get a roller, use it.
Use it.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRx podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.